Hey everyone, Reverend Geek here, and here are my thoughts on the third and last of the 60th anniversary specials. Now, I'm doing things a little bit different this week. I'm going to go back and give you my thoughts now on Wild Blue Yonder after the fact, after we've looked at everything. And then I'm going to go through the story, and then I'm going to give you my good, bad, and things to look out for that I think we as fans need to be really kind of looking for now, given the story. So, without further ado, let me get us on here. Now, last week, as you know, I was critical of Wild Blue Yonder. And I think I think it's safe to say, as short as 12's tenure was, that is going to be the worst story of the bunch. But here is my thoughts on how this all fits in. I'm going to give you kind of like my short assumption of the 60th anniversary specials. Now, the Star Beast was great. It felt like, hey, here we are. We're back. We're in the launch of the RTD2 era, and he's back, and things just felt familiar, and you forgot that how much you love the show. You forgot how fun it could be. I mean, if we're honest, like, yeah, the end of Moffat's tenure, he was starting to get long in the tooth. He was running out of steam, but it was still fun. And then Chibnall came in, and the air got sucked out of the room. And I mean, I wanted to enjoy Jodie so much as the Doctor, and I think a lot of people, that's what they wanted to do. But we got into this thing, and it just didn't feel natural. It didn't feel good. And now RTD came back, and we have the second RTD era. Star Beast launched really good, really strong. I don't know anyone who does not like that episode. I've talked with people. I even talked with people on Saturday that had just watched it and said, wow, what an episode. It was great. Wild Blue Yonder, that's what kind of helped me. I was talking to friends, and they didn't mind it. They liked it. It was a Doctor Who episode. Did it fit in with the 60th? No, not really, except that we kind of revisit back to the Timeless Child era, and I like it because now that is going to be hanging over the shoulder of the Doctor. No matter who they are, it's going to be hanging over the shoulder of the Doctor. And there's a lot to take in with that, but you know what? We're not gonna finish the story right here. We're gonna wait. There seems like, if anything, Wild Blue Yonder made us realize and remember that RTD likes to work with arcs. And if you go back to the original, to the start in 2005, you had Bad Wolf, then you had Torchwood, then you had Saxon. And it just seems like there was that overarching thing of what is going to happen here. What is going to happen here? And so that's what I really, really liked about Wild Blue Yonder, is it reminds you that this isn't over. There's stuff in here that you're gonna go back and you're gonna watch, and you're gonna be like, oh, that's what, yes. The Giggle. Now we're going to go into my review of The Giggle. The Giggle was a good regeneration story. It was a good regeneration story. Here's the thing that I think we have to be aware of with this, is that as good as it is, as good as we enjoy it, it's going to be something that we're going to have to watch out for. And I'll get into that. Because there were some things, if you've watched interviews and stuff after the airing, you know that this could have some interesting repercussions, and that's going to be in my things to keep an eye on. But let's get into the Giggle. So, the Giggle begins in 1925 in Soho. Now, I'm going to stop for a second. Soho, I had to look this up because if you're like me, I am a northeastern American. I hail from New England, and when I hear Soho, I'm thinking of a part of Manhattan in New York City. And so I'm thinking that can't be correct, so I had to look it up. Found out it's part of the West End of London. And this is where, excuse me if I butcher the name, John Logie Baird is. He has an assistant who goes in. This is our first time seeing the toy maker. I know that people are kind of put off by Neil Patrick Harris's German accent, but I think it works for me there because when I'm watching this and I'm seeing this at this time of year, I'm thinking of, Babes in Toyland, where we're talking about toys, and there's usually, I can remember a few different iterations of the story, the movies, and I can remember German accented people in there, and whether they were good or evil, there was something there that just felt natural. And so for me, I did not mind it. I enjoyed it, especially as he was trying to work something in his magic against Baird's assistant, and we get to see this as it plays out. And the first part ends with Baird coming into the realization that he has made contact with, he's made this broadcast, and now he's got some other things he's got to do to prove that this is a normal live broadcast, so that people don't think that he's just broadcasting a picture or somehow figuring a way to broadcast a picture. And so we go into our titles. When we come back, we are right there at the end of Wild Blue Yonder, where Wilf has told the Doctor and Donna that all hell has broken loose. We do not get to see Wilf again, sadly. I was kind of hoping that we would have seen some footage, because there was, if you go back a year ago, there was footage that was filmed with him in the wheelchair and David Tennant seemingly wheeling him around. And I even think there was a scene where we saw him wheel him right into the TARDIS, which would have been interesting given part of the conclusion of this story, but we'll get there. So it was just interesting. We see Donna, Unit shows up, and as all this is going crazy, the toy maker shows up and dressed in to the nines in a tuxedo and dancing with the Doctor, and we can see that there's some stuff going on here. And this really plays out into this interesting scene. Unit shows up, and basically Unit sits there and says to, they have to, they write off Wilf, to get him to safety. It was a really well done scene. I liked it. We see Wilf taken away. The Doctor is told what's going on. Goes to Unit, finds out what is going on, and they come to realize that they got to go travel in the TARDIS. There is this thing where they find out that Stooky Bill, that is the character that Baird used, is somehow been hiding underneath television broadcasts since all eternity of the time of the first broadcast. We are reintroduced to Mel at this, and it's kind of an interesting situation in this. Kind of an interesting situation in that they do the whole thing with da 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 da, and that works. And you see everybody is brought into it. The other thing that's interesting is, as everybody's going mad, Unit has developed these armband things. We see Kate get the armband taken off, offline to just show the doctor how things work. And she really berates people, especially Shirley Ann Bingham, who is the unit scientist who's kind of in line with the the third doctor, who was the first doctor expert for the unit. And we see how bad she feels after it. And they all come, they know, you can see where unit is really a family, where Kate is devastated at this, and Shirley is like trying to reassure her, I understand that wasn't you. And it's a real touching scene. It kind of adds some brevity to what goes on later in the story. But after discovering Stooky Bill, the Doctor and Donna go back in time to confront the toy maker. And it's at this point that the toy maker has led them through all these different things. We see where the toy maker leads them into his building. Donna mistakenly thinks it's a TARDIS. I still wonder, what goes on, especially since we don't know what the toy maker is other than another dimensional being. And now that we have the verification that the Doctor will now be understood as another interdimensional being, it kind of plays into that thing of, okay, if that's the case, then how does this work out? Is the Doctor and the toy maker from the same group? Who knows? I mean, there's really nothing that ever explains why. One thing that was interesting is I don't know why we did not get any kind of thing about the toy maker having a different face than the first time that the first Doctor confronted him. I don't believe there was any mention of that. And we get to this point where we have seen with the toy maker and the famous scene where he's cutting the strings. And that leads into the Doctor and Donna sitting down. And the toy maker is telling the story of Amy Pond and Clara Oswald and Bill. And we see where all these things are, oh, they're dead. And the Doctor's explaining, no, they're not. And, oh, that makes it all right. It's kind of an interesting play. It really plays on what I think happens later on in the episode. But they come down, they play a simple card game, and the Doctor loses. And so the toy maker is about ready to do something. Now, at this card game, it's interesting that we find out that the Master played a game with the toy maker to get more lives. Interesting. But that the Master lost, and now he was a gold tooth in the toy maker's mouth. It was kind of interesting. But anyway, that said, then we get into this thing with the toy maker, and it really kind of launches into this thing. Like the toy maker and the Doctor. The Doctor loses. The Doctor says, okay, I won one, you won one, now we have to go for the best of three. And so the toy maker decides that the best of three is going to be decided in 2023. Now we get the Doctor, he comes back, he's trying to explain things with Donna to Unit and Kate, Stewart, and that's when the toy maker shows up, and we get into this very interesting musical number to the Spice Girls, and it's in this scene that we see where these two soldiers go running up to get the toy maker. The toy maker touches them. They turn into a bunch of balls. The head of one of the guys bounces and into the hands of Shirley Ann, and she screams. The head screams, and the Doctor has to say, "I'm sorry, they're dead." And it's kind of this interesting thing The toy maker is doing everything he can. The guns are firing. Rose petals are shooting. It's quite the scene. It's hard to believe that this scene. I think if you look on replay, it's like a minute and a half, a minute and 45 seconds, but it feels longer. We get into the next scene now, where now the toy maker is on this gun that they have outside that they were going to try to shoot the satellites down. That's kind of key that I forgot. The satellite system that is supposed to be safer than Archangel has been launched, and this is where Stooky Bill and the whole brainwashing of the toy maker comes into being. They run out there. Kate tries to find out what happened to all the soldiers that are running, and this is where we get Neil Patrick Harris in this received English accent saying, "Oh, they probably still haven't hit the ground yet." And it is cold and well delivered. And it really hits the situation. Now, it is at this time that we then see where the toy maker then zaps the doctor with the beam from the gun, saying that in the first game it was him and the first doctor. In the second game it was him and the next doctor, I think is how he's, or another doctor. And then he will play the third game with the next doctor. So the doctor gets hit. We see the regeneration energy start to beam out. And it's kind of this interesting thing. I love this scene because Dawn is like, he's not going to die alone. Mel agrees, and they ask if they can come and hold his hand. And, the toy maker is gracious. He goes, "Handmaidens, go ahead." And so they do that. And the doctor turns to Donna and has to say, "It's not really death, I know, but..." And then he gets ready, and we get that whole thing where, it was kind of like that moment you were wondering what was going to happen because, the infamous thing of Ten's second regeneration. So this is the third time now Tennant's getting to regenerate, because we know the botched Meta Crisis one. But we see where he sits there and he says, "Okay, I'm ready. Allons-y." And then it's like it's gone. And he's like, "Oh, can you pull? And can you pull?" And we get this interesting scene where we have two doctors looking at each other, 14 and 15. They get to pull, they have to push on each other to separate. We see where evidently the 14th Doctor has gone commando because the 15th Doctor is wearing his underwear, and the 15th Doctor is also wearing the 14th Doctor's shirt and tie, and the 14th Doctor is wearing an undershirt, a long sleeve undershirt. And it kind of made an interesting thing there. But it was interesting. We see this, and they're asking what just happened, and the 15th Doctor says, "By generation." And he goes on to explain that it's a myth, but it actually isn't. And so it's kind of an interesting thing. It's something new to the lore, and I enjoyed it. I'm not going to say I hated it. I enjoyed it because really, for me, if you grew up, and I was 23 when I got to watch the Doctor Who TV movie here in America, and I loved the 8th Doctor. I felt for the longest time the 8th Doctor was my Doctor, because I got to watch him and then hear his audio adventures. But then there was always the thing of whether or not the audio adventures were canon. And I grew up, my parents, my grandfather was from Manchester, so my grandfather was watching Doctor Who and got my mom and my dad into watching it. So my dad was a 3rd Doctor fan, my mom was a 4th Doctor fan. I didn't know who I was. I liked the 5th, I liked the 7th, I liked the 8th. So of course when the 50th happened and the 8th basically made canon his audio adventures. I love that, but I've been a 10th Doctor fan, honestly, for a long time. But anyway, that I bring up to say that, to me, the thing I have been sore about is the 8th and 9th Doctors, that their eras were way too short, that we didn't really get to see them in action and see how their personalities developed and stuff. And, I felt that with 14. I was asking, what's different? We're hearing that 14 is different from 10, but how so personality-wise? That was the big question. And I think we have an out on that, but I'm going to get to that later. So we have this bi-generation that happens. The Doctors then say to the toy maker that they want to challenge him to a game. And the game is ball. And so it comes down to catch. And we see how this is really coming down to a very interesting thing. The 14th Doctor almost loses it right from the start. But he has the ball, and then we have that one scene where 15 throws it to 14, and 14 has to be like, hey, I'm on your side. That, to me, was an interesting, awesome aspect of the episode. But then it just seemed to end rather quickly. There's this tension that's building up, but then the ball goes out of the reach of the toy maker, and it's over. We see the toy maker flatten out and get folded up and put into the box that Mel was holding. And then that's it. We were told that is going to go to the Black Archives and surrounded by salt, which there's quite a few people on the interwebs that said that would happen. So now we have some interesting exchange between the 14th and 15th Doctors. There is really interesting things. I love how the 14th is kind of like, I'm better. And I think that's kind of the overarching thing. Even with Jodie's era, it felt like her Doctor was trying to be the 10th Doctor. 12 felt like, or 11 felt like 10. 12 felt like he was trying to be older, but there was a lot of stuff. You see what I mean? They kind of show where, like, each Doctor had their own personality, but there was something that seemed to be overarching, carrying over. And the way 15 kind of lets this be known is that basically it's the Doctor suffering from PTSD, which we have known since the 50th anniversary. We've known that since even before, but the 50th anniversary verified it for us, and we are then struck with the raw reality that the Doctor has to kind of come up with some way of healing. And the words of 15 is, you healed. And the thing was that what we come to understand is that because of this bi-generation, the 15th can go on the adventures, but the 15th is healed, and the 14th now has the rest of his life in which to heal and learn and so many other things. And so it's kind of interesting that the biggest thing was the TARDIS. We see the TARDIS, the prize, as 15 says, is that they're able to use some of the toy maker's energy and post-regeneration and all this sort of stuff. And we get 2 TARDISes. I do love the fact that 15 then goes to the TARDIS that he hit and says, sorry, baby, to it. I'm so sorry. It was a great scene, reminding us that the Doctor really loves the TARDIS, and that the TARDIS is a living, breathing thing. So we go into that whole aspect of this. Of course, David goes in, and this is the interesting thing. As I said, there were scenes earlier filmed with David Tennant and Cribbins and Catherine Tate, and it looked like he had wheeled Wilf into the TARDIS. And I think, given what had happened now, I'm going to say this, and I have to give a shout out to Theories. If you haven't been, if you want to look for another Doctor Who fan, Theories is somebody that I would say you need to watch. I have been watching him now for the better part of almost a year and a half, I think. I remember watching Flux and seeing his thoughts on that, and going into all the filming that we've had right now. But anyway, the way it is with him is he is a person who is reliant on a wheelchair, and he had spoken to Russell T Davies about that, and Davies basically told him that you're right. And so when he went back and he saw I think it was the Starbeast, Davies confirmed that the ramp is called the Theories ramp, and there are people that have responded to him on X saying that that is true. So Theories is the reason why we have this ramp, which I love. And I think the one thing that we noticed with the TARDIS is it's very wheelchair accessible right now. So that is an awesome thing for people with those type of needs and disabilities. I don't even know if disabilities is the correct way of saying it, but you know what? This is the way that I think it shows the moving forward of Doctor Who further into the 21st century, as was the joke that that we got along with it, thanks to the actress who plays Shirley Bingham. But with that, we see where there was that, and there's also a jukebox in the 15th Doctor's TARDIS, which the 14th has something to say. It's kind of the little in joke, and people haven't noticed this, people haven't said this, but one thing that has gone on since the first of these anniversary multi-Doctor episodes is we have the scene where the second Doctor says to the third Doctor, "Oh, you've been redecorating. I don't like it." And we get that, we got that with Tennant to Smith in the 50th, and this was kind of that roundabout way of doing it without saying it, without overfilling us, and I loved it. It was a perfect scene. But then we get to see where there are some things that I have left out, and I want to touch on this. One of the things was when, after they defeated the toy maker, we do find the gold tooth that is imprisoning the Master on the ground, and we see a mysterious woman again picking up the tooth, much like we saw with the ring so many years ago. That happens, and so it just means for us that we know that there is going to be a new Master. Who knows who it's going to be? I know a lot of people would like to see Sims back, and Sims was great. I mean, there hasn't been one thing I gotta say about the new Who era is we haven't had a bad Master. We've had great people playing the Master. So I'm kind of interested to see who we will get down the line. I'm kind of hoping we don't see the Master right now hitting into the next series. I think we got to really establish 15. But let me go back and just finish this out. We see where new doctor, he sits there, and there is this whole thing, this loving moment where they hug each other, and 15 tells him, you gotta, be with your family now here, and just get better so that I'm here. And it's kind of this "I love you" type moment, and it really feels natural. I know a lot of people probably, I haven't heard much. Like, I'm still wondering, but it really got me. It really hit the feels where, there was this thing of seeing how he was going to do this and how it was going to be. And you leave it with 15. He launches into his own adventures. And we go back to 14, and 14 is we see that he is developing a family with Donna. I've said this, that the love that they have for one another is as siblings, and you get to see that in this, where he basically refers to the Noble Temple family as his family. He calls Rose his niece. He calls Mel Mad Auntie Mel. I loved that. He refers to Sean as his brother-in-law, and the evil, I forget how he called Sylvia, the evil stepmom or something like that. I forget, but you could just tell that he had this love. And then I was so happy that we didn't write Wilf off, and that Wilf is off trying to shoot the what was it, the moles with the 22 or something. And it's just a nice scene, just a real nice scene. And so we go off with that, and it's just really this wonderful way of ending the story. And it gives me into this last part. I know this is going way long, but I wanted to hit this because I wanted to talk about the good, the bad, and the things to keep an eye on with this. So, the good. I loved Neil Patrick Harris. I thought he was perfectly cast for the Toymaker. My wife watched this with me, and she was so, she has loved the Toymaker since we were able to listen to the audio of the Celestial Toymaker many years ago. And it's a story that, if you know something about my wife has memory issues. She has a time trying to remember things, and it's only the things that they say that really she loves that she will remember without having to be reminded. And she remembered the Toymaker story from the first Doctor, and she's loved that. She's been disappointed that we have never found any of the episodes, except for, I think it's the last episode exists. But she wants to see, she's told me that if there's her hope of recovered lost episodes, it's that we get a complete Celestial Toymaker. So, fingers crossed on that. But she agreed with me that Neil Patrick Harris was just mesmerizing, doing the German, doing the received, just being able to do these voices, and really you felt him as the evil. The other good I liked was 14 and 15 working together, and this bond that they have, and it really brings it out into me. What's going to happen with this? What's going to happen in the future? And if you listen to RTD, there's a lot. We're gonna focus on that in a little bit. The other thing is, I love that we get a story with Mel, and that Mel is complete. It seems like there are stories where there are things that happen to companions, and you're kind of like, oh. And then you have stories like this where you see what happens, what happens, and you're just like, wow. So I loved that Mel, she's working for UNIT. She had her adventures after 7, and she recovered from them. She wasn't like some of the other companions, even though we did see her last year at the end of Flux in that Doctor Who companion support group. But there was some good stuff there that I think it shows that support group is really doing well for people. Anyway, that said, I'm going to go now into the bad. The bad is this. There isn't much bad. I have 2 points that I want to talk about. First off, was the resolution felt fast. It just, the whole thing was after we get 15, it just felt like we jumped into that game of catch and then it was over. And I would have liked to have seen 14 and 15 have to work a little bit harder to resolve the toy maker, especially after some of what we know of the toy maker. You know, like the game could have been a little more high stakes. There could have been some more stuff there, but it just felt a little fast. The other thing is that we get this thing that the Doctor is a workaholic. I mean, yeah, I understand that, okay, the 14th Doctor gets left with his TARDIS, and he's there trying to live life, but at the same time, the fact that he's taking Rose to Mars and having an adventure with Wilf, and it even sounded like he had taken Sean and Sylvia on some adventures, much to Mel and Donna's chagrin. And so there is some bit of a workaholic stage there that I think I would have much rather had him just be enjoying life, enjoying life and just settling down and being this uncle, being this brother, being this son, grandson type figure. It brings me back to Ten's final story, and he's talking to Wilf, and that whole thing where Wilf and Ten are like, I would have loved you to be my son, I would have loved you to be my father. And I felt that is the conclusion we want for 14. And, it's one of those things where we're gonna get into this in a little bit more. I know I'm going too long. So now the things to keep an eye on are, okay, we got 2 TARDISes. What does that mean? It means something, because RTD, if you've watched the things, he said, keep a lookout. We're going to touch on this in the future. So I wonder what that means. I wonder if that means that 14 will regenerate sooner than later. I don't know. The other thing is future spin-off. Do we get more 14th Doctor adventures? I think we do. I think if fits perfectly, because I would not be against having David Tennant return and do a one-shot episode every year for the next how many years, and then once he decides, hey, you know what, I'm ready to hand this off. And it would be cool to see him do this. This is what's cool about 14 being this way. Now I want you to think about this. This is what's cool about them doing this with 14. We all know David Tennant's father-in-law is Peter Davison, the 5th Doctor. And they famously did the Red Nose special with him in the 5th Doctor, and there was like this really like love fan fest going on there. And we know how much Peter loves David as a son-in-law, and that he's taking care of Georgia, his daughter, as well as Ty, Ty Tennant, if you don't know this, is the son or the child through another relationship that Georgia had, but David officially adopted Ty. And there is this joke going around where Peter Davison holds up the sign, he's not that special about David, and then David carries it on to Ty. And it's kind of an interesting thing. But what I would love to see is there has been some fan talk about Ty maybe sometime in the next 10 years becomes the next Doctor. And it would be nice to see if Peter Davison is still around and 14, David Tennant is doing this. It would be really nice to see those three generations of actors along with doing their three of their incarnations of the Doctor. I would think that would be an awesome thing. So that's just my thought. And this gives also a thing that we're going to see more multi-Doctor storylines down the road. I think that is a fine thing. I would love to see it. If you've watched RTV's thoughts on this, he really does kind of hint that is the major possibility, that he did this so that we can have multi-Doctor storylines down the road in this way. I don't know how that's going to be, but that is it. Those are my thoughts. Those are my things, and like them or not, that's my opinion. So with that, subscribe, go over to Theories. Great kid, love watching his stuff. And with that, I'm going to say I'm out of here because I have a lot to do. I have been talking far too long. I am losing my voice, and I have a lot to do today because I am a reverend. I am also a geek. And so, with that, geek out.